Hello, everybody. My name is JP Bedell, and this is the Lighting Guy Show. The show is done in collaboration with avnation.tv, and it's all about lighting, lighting design, technology, and the integration of all of those things. Joining me tonight is Tyler Whistler of HGTV and a variety of other things. How are you, Tyler?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Really awesome.
I'm thrilled to be here. So in the past couple of weeks, I've been sort of on and about social media as I am, and I came across a couple of posts from interior designers about lighting, and they seemed really, really focused on decoratives, right? Like, pendants and chandeliers and the things that you're used to seeing. But
Yep.
I kind of wanted to get a little bit past that and talk a little bit about the role that lighting can play in how you create an interior. What are some of the things that you should be looking for, and either as a customer, a client, or as a designer, and sort of how you approach it. So let's just talk sort of broadly. What kind of role does lighting play when you're laying out a room or a space?
Um, you know, it's it's one of the most important things in design. I remember years ago, had this client, very powerful man who ended up in jail. We won't mention any names, but he ended up in jail right before Bernie Madoff did. Uh, but he took me aside one day when we were doing his place, and he said, "You know what, Tyler? I'm gonna tell you something." And this guy is worth gazillions of dollars, and I was like, I better listen. He's going to give me some free advice here. And he said, if you control the lighting, you control the room. And I was like, that was his bit of advice to me, and I just thought it was the strangest thing. But it's so true. When you can control that lighting, you really do control what your focus is in a particular space and in a room. It is still a very hard conversation with clients, though. They don't always get it. They get it
Right.
when they go to a Broadway show and they understand the lights go out. It's time to sit up straight, time to pay attention, time to look forward. But in terms of being in a residential environment, it's still a learning process that's going on.
Right, right. So when you're working with, and I know this runs the gambit, right? Like sometimes you're designing a room with no other help. Sometimes you're working with an architect. Sometimes you're working with other designers. Do you have a seat at the table about the lighting conversation from the very beginning, or does it depend on the focus of the project?
It really depends on the focus of the project.
Yeah.
And every designer works very differently. Some designers work from the ground up, where they pick the flooring or they pick that perfect rug, and they're going to build up from that. Other designers work much more organically. What do you have that you're bringing to the table in terms of the clientele? What are you bringing to the table, and how will we develop it from there? So there's a lot of different approaches to starting a project. Um, it inevitably comes to lighting at some point. Most of the time, it's I have really bad lighting and I don't want to see my wrinkles. How do we fix? How do we fix that?
Right,
So
right. So when I was doing residential interiors, almost exclusively, the conversation had to start to happen around what I, as a lighting designer, would do and what an interior designer would do. And so when I developed a lighting plan, I would very, very rarely choose decorative fixtures. I would basically say I'd talk to the interior designer and say, where were you planning on putting a pendant or this or that? Did you have an idea for where these decoratives were going to go? And people always thought that was strange. They thought, like, as the lighting designer, I would be doing that. And what I try to explain to clients is that the lighting designer's job is to sort of work in the architectural lighting. So cove details, recessed
yeah,
lighting, art lighting applications, the sort of fixtures that you may not see but are going to dramatically change how the room looks and feels. And how do you think that clients, how do you best try to educate clients on what the difference between those two things is, that it's beyond sort of a chandelier in the middle of the room?
again, it's a crazy learning process, and it really depends how savvy that client is.
Right.
And I don't know that there's a way to judge it. I don't know that there's a way to I don't have the magic fix as how to make it better and educate, other than things like this where we're
Right.
just talking about it. But yeah, a lot of clients do not understand what a lighting designer is all about, unless they've gone there or they've got a real appreciation for things like art,
Right.
or You know, those are the people that all of a sudden want to bring lighting designers in and want to make sure that everything is the way it should be. They want their pieces to look like it's hung in a museum.
Right.
Most of the time, clients are more than willing. I don't know, are those MR16s up in the hi-hats going to line up properly? And I just want something really that's their mindset, and that's
Right.
about as far as it goes. So you know, there's definitely a learning curve that
Right.
happens with clients, and you know, towards the end of it, sometimes they get it. If there was a mistake made, or you know, they don't have enough light, and we're busy trying to add in things instead of what could have been a part of the shell and just a really, you know, seamless way to illuminate a space. But you know, it sort of is what it is. We're getting there. We're getting there.
What are some of the applications that you think about beyond decoratives as an interior designer? What are some of the lighting that you try to make sure your clients have? I mean, I'm thinking about like under cabinet lighting or some of the things that people don't necessarily think of as lighting because it's not beautiful fixtures, but it's important.
Well, under cabinet lighting, definitely. A lot of clients like to illuminate the interior of their cabinets as well, with some sort of down lighting, whether it's puck lighting, which you know doesn't really do too much. There are a handful of clients who are out there looking at LED and wanting to put them in coves and really sort of get that bounce back effect off the ceiling and really just
Right.
give a really nice glow. And then some, of course, take it, you know, 3 steps further, and then they want all those LEDs changing colors in Vegas in their house.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know about that, but you know, it's good. It's all good.
Listen, for some, it's the right answer. I don't know, but that was actually going to be my next thought. What I'm seeing is that specifiers are looking at LED first, which is kind of a change in the market. You
Yeah.
know, it was that in residential interiors, halogen was pretty much the standard because it was the best color and it dimmed
Yep.
easily and everyone used it. You're starting to see now that LED is becoming the first option, or at least considered first, and maybe it gets ruled out for other reasons. But do you uh, do you feel comfortable specifying it? Do you think that the interior design community is comfortable specifying it, or is that something that as the lighting design, like as lighting designers, we could be doing a better job of?
I actually go back and defer to whomever I'm using in with regards to the lighting.
Sure.
Um, I will throw things out if I happen to know of them, but with lighting, lighting is sort of like baking. There's a science to it. It's not like cooking where you can kind of do a sprinkle of this and a dash of that. Like there's a precise science to baking in order to make that cake rise and in order for it to turn into something. And that's sort of the same thing with lighting. There's a precise science that goes behind why things are illuminated, why things look good, why you know why it's this color, that color, why there aren't shadows. And so I try to rely heavily off of the professionals who specialize in that.
That is possibly the best analogy I've been trying to find a way to explain to people why it's complicated or why it's important, and I've never had like a little pocket phrase. And it's baking, not cooking. I think that's really good. I think that's really solid.
And I totally just thought of that on the fly, but
Hey, see, there you go. That's why we do these things. You see?
this, but this is exactly what it is. I mean, there's definitely not a right or wrong, but there's a method to the madness of it all.
Yeah, there is, and the there LED has made it, I think, a little more complicated because what it's done is if you were, I've dealt with several interior designers who they kind of got a spec down for certain things, like whenever they were doing recessed downlights, they always chose this particular fixture with this particular MR16 because they knew
Guil-
what the output was going to be.
Guilty.
Yeah, and I get that. Like it was you want to be able to know like roughly just sort of having seen it multiple times. If I put 6 of these in the room, given the size, it's going to put out enough light. If
Yeah.
I put in 12, it's too much. If I put in 8, whatever. You know the proportions. You know how it works. You know how easy it is to install or not install. I think when you talk about LED and you start talking about color temperature variations, do I want the warm white, the super warm white, the neutral white, the cool white? Do I want this lumen output or that lumen output? It's a language that we haven't necessarily gotten good at translating yet. And so there isn't a shorthand, you know? So my recommendation, and this is just, you know, maybe it's because of what I do now every day, but I think lean on your reps. You know, get out there and have reps come and show you samples, come and show you the LED equivalents or near equivalents of what you had been speccing. If it's important to you, I mean, I feel like it's important because I'm an advocate for energy saving and sustainability and all those things, and so, and it's, you know, listen, if your client ever has to change a light bulb, that's good for them too. But if it's not right, and I say this to everybody, if it doesn't get the job done, then it really doesn't matter what these other sort of niceties are. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You know where another, just sort of another layer on top of that is a lot of times interior designers go back, besides their specifiers or their lighting reps, we go right back to the electrician. Because a lot of times we built up that rapport with the electrician. They know exactly what we like to spec, and so they think it's a 1, 2, 3 job. And then as soon as we start throwing new products out there, you know, the electrical industry is one of those where you get good at what you get good at, but there are constantly new things coming out, and sometimes it's intimidating to some of these guys, and they don't want to deal with it. And so that's another issue that, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I was just having this conversation this morning with an interior designer friend of mine, and we were saying how the great contractors, and this is good of any, this is true of any profession, I think, they are willing to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, when you've got, you know, I was specifically talking about a job where I was, I had spec'd a recessed track product. The client had a big art collection in their apartment, and they changed it constantly, apparently. And so they didn't want a recessed solution. They wanted track lights that they could point around the room, which I would never normally spec in a residence, but that's what they wanted. So we chose a recessed track that sat proud of the ceiling or above the ceiling line so that it was a nice clean look in the ceiling and just the track heads popped out below. Contractor had never installed it before, right? Never said anything to me. So I issued drawings, I issued, you know, specs, I did the shop drawings for them, installation guides. I get a phone call, frantic phone call from the GC. The track is sitting in a pile on the floor, and I get into the room and he says, I don't know how to install any of this. Well, you didn't tell me any of this. I didn't reinforce the ceiling for it. I don't have it, you know. And it's just a matter of, if you had said to me at the very beginning, I don't know how to install this, we could have talked about it. We could have solved all these problems ahead of time. And so the lesson to be learned here is say I don't know. Like, there's so many lighting products out there. It's okay not to know how every single one of them works or how they get installed or how much wattage they're going to pull. There's a million of them out there. It's not, you know, no trade is simple, but it's changing every day. So it's okay to say, I don't know. You know, I just don't know.
Yeah, and you know, some of those old school contractors, you know, get really caught up in who they are, what they do. You know, again, it's one of those things. It's an education process, and you know, it's just admitting that you need help. And so many of these guys don't want to admit that they ever need help until it's past the point of no return. Then they're like, ah!
Right. Now they're screaming at everybody. So we talked a little bit about under cabinet lighting. We talked about internal cabinet lighting. How do you attack the bathroom, right? The bathroom is always, when the lighting conversation comes up, bathrooms are always brought up as the challenge room. Like, you need it to be bright enough for makeup application. You need it to be, but soft enough so that if you're taking a bath at night, you don't feel like you're in Shea Stadium. Like, do you have an approach to them, or do you just sort of take them room by room?
You know, it really is sort of a room by room, client by client process. Yeah. The bathroom is definitely that place where you need to get rid of my wrinkles. Right. Kind of conversation happens.
Yep.
And it's a tough one because, you know, there's only so much that you can do within such a small footprint. You can't get those nice blobby kind of, you know, caressing rays of light on you, right. Unless you've got a lot of different sources where I guess you can kind of compensate and play with it, and that's kind of what ends up happening. It's a combination of maybe there's a few recesses, maybe there's a surface mount, and then there's some sconces. So you've got sort of the front light, you've got the blobby light around you, and then you've got the definite downlights.
Yeah.
So I think it's really just playing with the combination of it. Well, I don't know whether that's right or wrong. I don't.
It's right. I mean, the first, like, what I would say about it is, you always want, if nothing else, a low, mushy, fairly bright light source in the bathroom, so that when you're looking in the bathroom mirror, you're surrounded on both sides, and at least if that's accomplished, other stuff you can work on, right? Like, if you can't get the shower light of your dreams, at least if the vanity looks good and people feel good looking at the vanity, that's usually a win. The architecture and the setup of the room is really what's going to present the challenges there. My feeling about it is, and then this is something that's just, for anybody, our audience on the show is largely AV integrators, people that work on the systems side, but just to sort of broaden this, if you've never worked with an interior designer before, especially in residential work, it is an extremely intimate practice. You don't think it is, because you wouldn't think so, but I've sat in on some of these conversations, and it's like, this is what I do in the bathroom every morning, this is how I go to sleep at night. It's very personal. It's not, it's not like doing a corporate interior where it's like, well, we have conferences in this room and meetings in this room and lunch in that room. It doesn't work that way. You're really getting to know people, and it's an opportunity to, first of all, for great design, but it's also an opportunity to really work with your control interfaces and really tailor an experience at home that's unique. And that was my sort of next sort of talking point, which was, have you worked with AV integrators before? Have you worked with control people before and sort of tailored how presets in a room work, or are you, how do you work with that stuff?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
People, just in general, most people are still actually pretty hesitant with it. They love it. We can walk into somewhere, say like the Lutron showroom, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is awesome, and I can do this." And there my blinds go, and then my TV comes on, and it's like that Modern Family episode, where all the bells and whistles are going off, and they love it. But then they say, "And then what happens when the power goes out? And then what?" And they just get so scared of technology, because we all know that it's great when it works, and it really sucks when it doesn't. And it's this weird toss-up. And actually, the client who told me, when you control light, you control the room, he was one of those guys who I would only expect to go there, but no, he wanted off and on. He didn't want anything, even like a Maestro dimmer, where you saw the little lights going up and down. He wanted that toggle going up, so he knew exactly what was going on. There's some people who just can't go there, and they're not gonna, which is fine. As long as we make that bank of 40 plus switches look really nice.
Right. You can find some sort of, wall treatment to hide them behind.
Oh, God.
No, I think that this is one of those things that's changing. And lighting control manufacturers they've always sort of fought the good fight about what these control systems can do. And you're right, it's the wow factor. You push the button and a million things change. It's exactly what you want. And when it works, it's magic. The residential interiors I worked on largely used them. But everybody always has that one horror story, right, where either the power goes out or, for some reason somebody unplugged something or God knows what. And we had one client, this is a few jobs ago now, but a few years ago, where, and I won't say what brand it was, but the lighting control system, there was a malfunction and all the lights were stuck on, right? Which sounds better than the alternative, and I guess it is, but this is a very, very wealthy man with a lot of money and has spent a lot of money on this system, and he couldn't go to sleep because his MR16 reading lights that were right above his head in the ceiling were stuck on like an interrogation light over his head, right? So he calls my boss and he's freaking out. Everybody's got a horror story like that.
Maybe that was just guilt on his part that he felt like it was an interrogation line. You know, there's another side story to that whole thing.
Yeah, right. But he there's always everyone has that horror story, and then they say, well, I'm just going to go to switches. I think what's changing, and this is my analogy to this is the smartphone, because largely the same sort of people are getting involved. Apple and Google and the big players are coming aboard, and Philips has got their Hue product, and we're seeing more and more of this sort of big company that you've heard of is doing it, so maybe it'll gain some adoption. Apple's going to release what they're calling HomeKit in the next, I think it's in September or soon. Google already bought Nest, the home automation company. I think when you're going to be able to, in very small bite-sized pieces, use your smartphone to do certain things in your home automatically, it's going to desensitize people to this, like, what if it fails problem. Like, everybody worried that, like, their life was in their smartphone, and then when it was that much better, everyone just put their life in their smartphone, right? Like, I think once you can actually, like, pick up your phone and go, Siri, it's time for bed, and the lights dim and the doors lock, that kind of magic is, I think, going to change the game, but it's not there yet. And I think for the AV integrators out there, the hurdle that you're trying to climb is matching the wow factor functionality with the desire for super simplicity. That's the sweet spot, And I find, and tell me if you find it differently, but I find that 3 or 4 presets in a marquee space, like the dining room is usually the best example. The kids are doing their homework, you need it super bright. You're hosting a dinner party, you want it moody and romantic. You're cleaning and you need it bright in the corners but not on the table, and maybe you want everything all off when it's the end of the night. 4, basic settings. That's a good place to be. Once you start getting into time codes and it could do this, and if I want it on the weekends it can do that, I feel like that's where people start to shy away. Maybe how what's your experience been?
No. That's a very, very good point. I mean, people they do like the bells and whistles. They like the flexibility, but they also like to be able to have it within, one hand's worth of options. Because past that point, it's like, why would I need this sconce on and that at half? But it's like, what was this preset for again?
Yeah.
It's dinner, homework, cleaning, and off. Exactly like what you said. Those make sense.
Right.
All the other sort of weird ambiance things that somebody was trying to sell them, that doesn't make sense. It all sounds good, but at the end of the day, if there's a way to really streamline it all, but still give everybody those bells and whistles that they want, that's the perfect marriage. And it's really just getting there and getting people to trust that when it's installed, look, it really is this easy.
Yes.
Bam, we're good.
Right. And there's a couple of things I would say to the AV integrators out there. Number one, you're not selling a one-time commissioning and you're not selling a system. You're selling a service. So you don't walk in on day one, commission the system, and say, it's done, right? Like, here it is, all your stuff dims, I'm walking away. Because people live with these systems. And 6 months down the line, they realize that the bright was too bright, or they realize that the romantic was too moody. You're selling a service, build it into your service contract that you're going to come back at either at a time they choose or at some set date in the future and revamp the system after they've had a chance to live with it for a month or 2 months or whatever it is. That's number one. Number two, if you're going to tie in media, make it updatable by the end user. You know how many phone calls we would get that it was like, I can play my music from my home system, and then like, oh, I bought a bunch of new music. How do I put it in? Like, it's got to be dead simple. If it's going to be the central thing, it's got to be the central thing. And what I would say, and Tyler, you can tell me what you think, if you're the interior designer and you spec the system or you ask for the system, you set the first presets. You come in and you show them what it's supposed to look like and let them tweak it from there. Because I never liked this idea that you were going to walk through with the end user and make all your settings with them. Like, how overwhelming is that? Like, to walk in and make them choose all that. Like, you chose it, you help them get it through. What do you think?
No, I think that's really smart. It's almost sort of along the lines of going out shopping with the client. You know, we have the best intentions going in shopping with the client. We're going to show you this showroom, and we're going to pick out your kitchen hardware, and we've got three things to pick. And the minute they walk in, they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Can you just
Right.
can you just do this for me? And it, you know, maybe it takes a one-time thing where the client always wants to feel involved, though. That's the tough thing. They want to feel involved. So maybe you go through that first room with them, and you show them what it entails,
Right.
and then you just say, "Cool, I've got this from here on out." Because the odds are they're going to be bored after, you know, three presets. They're going to
Yeah.
be like, yeah. But if you get them involved early on, they understand that we're all working. This is a job.
Yeah.
And and we're trying to do it properly, they're normally going to back off. But yeah, it is an important thing to have the designer there because as the interior designer, the last thing that we would want to do is have those lights start to overwhelm everything that we just put in to make beautiful,
Right. Right.
because the client's like, oh no, big and bright, I want Vegas up in here. And they've gone there. I've gone to clients, and all of a sudden, it's Vegas up in there, and I was like, oh, when did we discuss this? And and it's like, oh, called the lighting guy over, and we made some new presets.
And we made some lights. Yeah. Yeah. I know. And like as the lighting guy, it becomes like I want that enthusiasm. I want them to want to do that stuff. My job is to edit, and I feel like that's every designer's job, every specifier's job is there's a world of product out there. There's a million things you could do. I'm trying to help you refine down to the things that you really should or want to do.
Yeah, let's get to the best of the best and what makes the most sense for you. For you as the client, this is the approach that we should take, and this is going to work out best for you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trust that has to go on with that. Again, it's clients being educated that we actually know what we're talking about. So there's a little bit of release that has to happen on their end, and just loosening the grip. It's happening.
It happens, and every client relationship is a little different. It's extremely personal, like we were saying. One of the things that I want, if any interior designers are going to pick up and watch this, one of the things I want, just to close up on because we're getting up against our clock here, I want to just talk quickly about the power of, or two things, two-part thing. One, when we talk about accent lighting as lighting designers, we're talking about something totally different than what most interior designers are talking about. Most interior designers will say the word, or I shouldn't say most, but many interior designers will write the phrase accent lighting, and what they mean is like a little lamp or a small piece of lighting somewhere in the room that sort of accents the room. Or that's not what lighting designers mean when we say accent lighting. What we say when we mean it is, let's say you've got a sculpture in the corner or a piano or some feature piece that you want to put a little extra light on to draw attention to it. That's what accent lighting is. When we talk about recessed cans, they don't have to just be downlights. They can be a recessed adjustable fixture that can point at a target. And this is a super powerful tool for interior designers that I feel like doesn't get used enough. There's a lot of manufacturers that make them of varying quality, but when you can actually take the tiny little pieces that you've put on the center table and illuminate them from the ceiling, it's magic to a client because they walk in and the thing that they obsessed over, the thing that you went on the shopping trip about, gets this pop of light, and it just illuminates on the center table or illuminates in the corner of the room, and it draws everyone in. If you don't know about these tools, wherever you are, I promise you, somewhere in this great nation of ours, there's somebody that wants to sell it to you. So reach out, do a little research in your local area. There's a rep, there's a website, there's a blog, there's something out there that can help you find these products because there's better ways to do it than just downlighting and lots of decoratives. Tyler, if there's one lighting tip you could leave our audience with tonight, what would it be?
One lighting tip.
I just put you on the spot for these things.
Be able to control the lighting.
There
And and everybody's said it before and everybody's heard it 1,000 times, but the more the more sources of light that you have, not that we want Vegas, but the more sources we have to work with and play with, the more we're able to accomplish what as interior designers we're trying to do, and that's just make a space as beautiful as possible.
Gotcha.
So, just having different combinations of light from above, from the side, from below, shooting in two different directions, with the table lamp, or having those options, I think are the biggest tool for us, and having lighting designers to help us out.
Right.
You guys are out there, and it's true. A lot of interior designers would rather just kind of let an architect, I don't know, pop it in, and we're going to call it a day, and they want just the fancy stuff. So, we need to reach out to guys like you.
Integrate. All right. This is my all right, everyone listening, this is my first try at the outro, so be gentle. I want to thank you, Tyler, for joining me on today's. Where can our audience find you, sir? Where can they get in touch with you?
You can find me at tylerwhistlerhome.com. Every social media out there, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever it is, it's all NY Design Guy across the board. Or you can just Google me. You'll find something if you Google me.
Yeah, yeah. And most of it is cool. I mean, some of it.
Most of it.
Yeah.
A little you have to, hit an extra site for, but pay it off. But whatever.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As I said, this show is the Lighting Guy podcast. It is a collaboration with the folks at avnation.tv. You will find this show and many others that are centered on professional systems integration, lighting, sound, tech, all the major fun bells and whistles things across the entertainment and design communities. I am your host, JP Bedell, here at The Lighting Guy. You can find me on Twitter at James Bedell. This has been another episode of The Lighting Guy. Thank you for watching.